Not unusually for Cape Town, it's a little blustery this morning, but it does add to the freshness of a day that, Charles Hopkins, is pretty important to you and to your fellow Durbanville winemakers, because it is this breeze that sweeps in off False Bay that's so much a signature of the wine that you make.
Yeah, it's it's definitely described as one of the cooler regions in South Africa. We are 7 kilometers away from the ocean. We're standing now on 180 meters above sea level. And then I learned through the years that the two biggest influences on a cool, moderate climate is proximity to the ocean and altitude, and we are blessed to have both of them, and basically the whole of Durban will have it. We ourselves in Durbanville Hills are sort of ocean facing, and then we have the inner valley and the outer valley, where we have 10 wineries in the valley that produce wine. Of Durbanville Hills is the biggest, and then I guess Dimmersdal, Merendal and ourselves is more or less the same size, and then a few smaller ones.
Making wine here, and you must be, about 4 decades now of making wine, and a big chunk of that here. Yeah. Surely you can make the wine in your sleep. You've done it so many times now. It can't be that difficult, Charles.
I disagree with you, my friend. Every year provide a new challenge and a new ball game, and but I must say, to summarize this one, we are 2 days from finishing. And it's seriously exciting to get to the end of harvest. And I think everybody's yawning a bit and it's a bit stiff, sore backs and stuff like that. But it's been an exceptional vintage. And what is the reason? People say, but why is one vintage better than the other one? It's all about moderate climatic conditions. And I'm telling you, today is a bit windy and it's chilly. This morning when I drove here, it was 17 degrees, where in the last few weeks it was always 20, 21 degrees in the morning. So clearly you can see the seasons is changing. But we have never experienced serious rain or a heat wave. And for me, the worst thing is the heat wave, really. A heat wave, the definition of a heat wave is 3 hours above 35 degrees. We had one spike of 34 and immediately start chilling due to the wind.
What I love about you talking about wine, and I've seen this so many times, you're 4 decades and more into this industry, and yet the excitement never goes. Your eyes still light up when you talk about wine.
I still have butterflies in my tummy before harvest. But it's winemaking is, I think Peter Ferreira, his slogan is not a destination, it's a journey, and if you ever think I've learned enough now, you are in trouble, because it's an ongoing learning curve.
You've got this extraordinary valley, just the view is beautiful. I would never get any work done because I'd just be sitting on the deck taking it all in. But you do have to get some work done, and the work that you've been doing this year is really exciting, because this vintage, and I say this cautiously because every wine person always tells me, no, Dan, this is the single greatest vintage we've ever had ever, by lots of the wine. But you are one of many winemakers who said to me, Dan, 2025 is something special.
Yeah, no, it is really the biggest contributor to that positiveness is the moderate climate, what we call the ripening season, from the first week in January when the fruit goes through veraison, where green berries turn black and white berries turn yellow, green berries turn yellowish, where you can take a berry off a cluster and chew it. And then we go through half veraison, full veraison a week later. From there till picking is around 35 to 40 days, the first picking. If you can have that without heat waves and serious storms, if I may use that term, and it can linger on for another 25, 30 days. So that's more or less the time we are now in. We had nothing like that, and it's really, I'm cautious to say, the best vintage ever. I think a lot of guys will clap me and say, Charles, watch out, the 15 was the best vintage ever. 7 was for me a great vintage, but 25, and like I say, tomorrow we finish, and I think most wineries in the valley will finish this week, will definitely be in that category of the best.
It's so important for you and for your family for this to be a great vintage, because it's a seminal year in the life of Charles Hopkins. As we step out of wine for a moment, your daughter Marcille, who I've been lucky enough to spend some time with, she joined me on the Dan Nichols show, the host of Boersoeke Vrou. She is giving you a new title that's quite important.
Yeah, it's a opa or grandfather, and it's quite exciting. I must still get used to it. I'm preparing myself now to let this, it's a boy, if I may reveal the gender. I'm already thinking of putting a rugby ball between that two small hands somewhere, or maybe a bottle of wine, a cork or something like that. No, it's very exciting, and it's our first grandkid.
When the little one arrives, it'll be a day of great joy, and do let me know, because I'll open something at home. What bottle of wine will you be opening as you look back across this extraordinary life of Charles the winemaker that says this is amazing? And then what will you be making from the 2025 vintage, as I know you will as a winemaker, bottling under the name of your grandson as that tribute wine?
Can you believe it, Dan? My daughter was born in 1993, and that day we harvest not Durbanville Sauvignon Blanc, but Darling Sauvignon Blanc for the first time. And it was before cell phones. I took my wife in Paarl Hospital, and the doctor was saying it will take another 3 hours. I rushed back and I said, let one of my guys stay at the phone. I said, if the doctor phoned, I went back again, and then the baby was born. And you won't believe it, this year, on her birthday, in 17 February 2025, we harvest, you won't believe it, Darling Sauvignon Blanc again. So I'm definitely going to open a bottle of Koetsuis. That's amazing. That's the biggest portion of Darling, and I'm going to drink that. And if you ask me if I'm going to bottle something, let me give you that answer in 2 weeks' time. Then everything will be pressed, and I'll give you a very good answer then.
Well, what I can tell you is it's going to be fantastic wine. Either way, there is a little child about to enter the world who won't realise for a while, but will with time, that his grandfather, his opa, is quite simply one of the coolest guys in wine. It's only when you get out to De Grendel that you remember just how close to Cape Town this particular estate is. From Cape Town itself, this looks miles away, and yet when you stand on the deck with that sweeping view out to Table Mountain and Signal Hill and the stadium and the city, you remember the proximity is very near indeed, which means really, De Villiers, I should be getting out here more often because it is so close to Cape Town. It's a beautiful space, and it's one that's obviously so cherished by you and your family. Tell us a bit about the history of this particular farm.
Well, I'm the fourth generation of the family to live on De Grendel and run De Grendel. My great-grandfather bought the farm in 1890, and effectively to stable horses, not to grow wine grapes. All the wine grapes had actually been decimated by the phylloxera of the late 1880s. And the story goes that he lived in Sea Point at the time and was in the refrigeration business, and went on a trip to Argentina, and instead of buying cattle, he arrived back with a string of Arab horses that he had fallen in love with. So he came out to De Grendel, which was in the market, much lower rainfall, around 400 millimeters of rainfall a year, so much, much drier. And then it was only in my father's generation, 3 generations later, or 2 generations later, that the first vines were planted in 2000.
So it took a while to finally get to what you are extremely good at, which is making world-class wine. And you've been doing that for a while now. Was it something you were always going to get into? Did you always have that passion for wine, for the farm?
Well, I studied viticulture at Stellenbosch, and my dad also did a degree in agriculture. And it was, in fact, in my third year at Stellenbosch that I went and had tea with Dampy Bailey, who told me about the plans to build Durbanville Hills Winery at that stage. And he said that as Distell, they identified that Durbanville area as a fantastic area for growing wine grapes, and I should go home and tell my father and grandfather that we need to plant vines at De Grendel. So we went down to my grandfather and had drinks with him one Sunday evening, and put the idea forward to him. And his first comment was, well, if we grow vines on De Grendel, where will my cattle graze? And so it took another 6 odd years to persuade him that we should plant wine grapes, and it was in 2000 that the first vines were planted. And by that stage, my dad was taking over the reins, and I think my grandfather had given up on his argument.
His losing battle had come to an end. You were very passionate about, your dad's very passionate about, which is this sense of history and tradition. And amongst the many ways in which it is reflected is the wine that sits beside us.
Yeah, this is our flagship wine. It was my father's concept. He went on to study philosophy in the UK. That was written by Omar Khayyam, which is called the Rubaiyat. And Rubaiyat means quatrain, translated from Persian, which obviously means 4, and it's poetry written in lines of 4. So hence the reason why the wine has 4 varietals in it. But Omar Khayyam in this poem wrote about love, the meaning of life, and interestingly often included the word wine, what is very applicable still to this day, i.e. love, the meaning of life, and the importance of including wine in your daily lives.
You've had less than 2 decades of producing this wine.
Exactly.
So you've got about another 140 verses you can still get through.
Well, you won't collect the whole poem in your lifetime, so...
I'm backing myself. Well, cheers to it. Tell me, just from a wine drinking perspective, what is it about this wine that you think not only makes it special, but speaks to Durbanville, which is often an area we think of for its Sauvignon Blanc, for the white wine, more than we do its red, where this shows exactly why red should be championed here.
Yes, Dan. So as you say, Durbanville's very well known for its cool climatic climate and its suitability to growing varieties like Sauvignon Blanc in particular. But it's also a great area, as we've discovered, for growing some red varieties, particularly Merlot, which is an important component of this wine. But the largest component is Cabernet and Petit Verdot, which also do well in this area. And then we add a bit of Cabernet Franc just to make up the quatrain. And I think with the use of oak barrels and Charles's magic in the winery, this wine has put its hand up on an annual basis to have reached the acclaim that it has done.
Well, it's a flagship that does you proud and does this wonderful story of De Grendel proud. Thank you for running through the history. I didn't realise all of that, and it is a fascinating one. But I think just as there are many more rubaillettes to come, so there are many more generations to come and many more De Grendel stories. Now, I look forward to watching them unfold. Cheers.
Thank you, Dan.
I've lost count over the years of the number of conversations I've had with particularly younger people in the wine industry who have mentioned the same name time and again, and that name is Charles Hopkins. Charles, it must be so rewarding for you in that you have this legacy that runs right through the South African wine industry, and that continues with Lelo here today as well, of all of these young people, especially through the Cape Winemakers Guild Protégé program, where you've taken these young, excited, slightly uncertain, trainee, aspirant, hopeful winemakers under this broad wing of yours and given them this enormous shove in the right direction.
So it's really special to see a young rookie. I joked with them, they're all qualified winemakers and they come from different backgrounds. Anyway, anything from Zuar in the Southern Cape to Steinkopf in the Northern Cape, and Lelo, for instance, from Pretoria, and they all come from different backgrounds. But it's amazing to see a young qualified winemaker arriving here as a rookie, Dan, as you mentioned, and leave a year later, hopefully as a more confident young winemaker. And it's really special. And some of them stay very close to me. They are like kids of mine. I'll talk to them on a weekly basis on WhatsApp and so on, and some of them, it's not just being at the Grendel, but where they are today as young winemakers is the most special thing of the whole exercise. I had 16, Lelo is the 16th, and it's really special.
Well, introduce me to number 16 and what makes Lelo such a special member of the Grendel family.
Yeah, she spent last year working at Hartenburg, and she's with us now. And next year she'll do her 3rd year. And like the rules of the guild that's on the protégé program, as soon as she's finished her 3rd harvest, she can start applying for jobs.
Lelo, it's lovely to have you on the show. Wine in Pretoria normally comes in a slightly fortified version and has Coke added to it. How does a young person from Pretoria end up making wine in the Cape?
So, that is definitely right. I did not know anything about the wine industry until I was in my final year of high school. And in that year, the Department of Agriculture had a weekend expo into viticulture and enology. So they just selected different learners from different parts of South Africa, and we all flew in to Cape Town. Then we stayed in Stellenbosch for the weekend. And that's when we went to different wineries. We met with previous protégés as well. Remember, Mahalia was there. Morgan was also there. And we were introduced to the world of wine and winemaking. And I think I always say it was love at first sight. It was absolutely beautiful. And I I just looked at that and I thought, this is something that I think I want to do.
It sounds quite glamorous. You're going to be making wine, drinking wine, tasting wine. This is going to be amazing. It doesn't take too long, I'm sure, to discover that there is rather a lot of hard work that goes into this.
No, definitely. To my shock, that's what I also thought. Because, we went everywhere. We were tasting wine and just sightseeing. It was so beautiful. And then you go to Stellenbosch University and you realize very quickly that that's not it. There's so much hard work behind it. But then you fall in love with that. You fall in love with all of it, the glamorous side and the not so glamorous. But it's also beautiful.
This passion that you have, Charles, of taking young people who like Lelo, not just adding such a wonderful dimension to the industry, but changing the face of it, and very importantly so. Why has this struck a chord with you? And particularly, I've seen over the last 10, 15 years in your career, you really have embraced giving this next generation a foot up.
Can you believe it? 38 years ago when I started off, there was 488, sorry for all the figures, and there was 3 female winemakers. Now there's 230 female winemakers, but there's only about 60, 70 people of color that's winemakers. And, I think we need to change that quickly and dramatically. And, I'm supporting the Guild, the whole protege program. And it's amazing that I have different youngsters, if I may use that term, from different walks of life, different backgrounds and different cultures. And it's just amazing in a cellar. You can ask Lelo behind my back even. It's all about a wonderful camaraderie spirit, and there we work hard and we work late and we rub shoulders, and sometimes there's a bit of a roughness between us that's quite normal.
When you spend time with Charles Lelo, you get the most extraordinary education because, yes, you've studied and there are practical elements to that study, but actually coming out as you did last year at Hartenberg, as you're now doing at De Grendel, it is a full-on practical class every single day. Tell me about some of the things that you've learned from Charles in particular, and why having this new wine opera in your life is doing so much for you.
No, definitely. I think also I just want to say emphasis on every single day. We learn every single day with Charles. But yeah, no, Charles has been super amazing. I think when you get out of university, you think you know some stuff, and then you get into the wine industry and you realize that not really. But so many other things. I mean, he tells me so many other things, like teaches me a lot from analysis to just in general winemaking.
Well, what has that done for your confidence as a winemaker?
I think it's done a lot. I mean, now I can look at analysis. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I can look at that and kind of have an idea of what's happening. And I think that's really amazing for me.
You're very much on the front foot. The omens are good for your wine future, Lelo, because the mentor and teacher you have by your side has got a pretty decent track record. And Charles, if I look at the wines in front of me here, we go back to Sasha, I think it's now with KWV. That's 2011. That's 14 years ago. Morgan, who's with you now here, I think this wine was made up the road at De Graaff. But you've got these wines as testament to these people who've passed through you, and you've been able to watch them not just in your year with them, but seen them grow into extraordinary winemakers in their own right.
Yeah, amazing. Dan, I can take you literally through each of them where they are today. One lady is now in Austria. She's a senior winemaker there. There's a girl in Germany. That's just two youngsters that left South Africa and work abroad, and hopefully they will come back and plow some of that experience back in South Africa one day. But there's quite a few that's winemakers. One or two is already senior winemakers, and others is youngsters in the process. But something, talking about the wine, I don't know if your audience know about it, but in the second year of the protege program, the protege is make a barrel of wine, and she made bubbly. That's quite interesting because bubbly is now in 2 barrels. I gave her another barrel just to have an option of blending. The one is going through malolactic, and the great thing about the wine industry, I told her phone 4 other expert MCC or Cap Classique makers, and she did, and she has sort of put that in a pot and stir it a bit and come out with her style. And the 1 barrel is going through malolactic, the one is fresh, as we say, and she will blend the 2 and bottle it. The only shortfall with bubbly, specifically Blanc de Blanc Chardonnay. And in my office, I'm so proud, there's 15 bottles standing, 14. The protege of last year, wine is still in barrel, and her wine will be added in the future.
So you have a bubbles on the horizon, Lelo. I'm going to be coming back to try it, and we'll have the cameras with us, put you under some pressure. but you've also got this extraordinary horizon. You've got wonderful people like Charles, like Morgan by your side. What does the wine future hold for Lella?
I think it's going to be very big and bright. It's going to be full of learning. And I think in the short term, it's more getting out of South Africa and exploring the world of wine just in general.
All right. I am, as I say, coming down to try that first one. We'll be watching closely. It's great to be able to spend some time with you, Lella, and to watch your young wine journey unfold. And it's also great to see yet another chapter in this wonderful protege relationship, Charles. South African wine owes you a huge, huge debt of thanks, because there are so many of our winemakers, not just in the protege program, who you've influenced. There's no one who you won't answer a call from and give some advice to, which is such a wonderful attribute to have. And you've helped me because you've shared many glasses with me as well, for which I'm most grateful. So do keep that up. You're an inspiration.
You're a hard learner, Dan. That's your problem.
I'll slow down. And Lella, good luck. Have a wonderful year. Enjoy the 8 days a week of hard work, because I know it's tough, but the rewards are huge. And I am very excited about those bubbles.
Thank you.
There we go. Charles Hopkins, so many proteges. Lello is number 16. And according to Lello, the best yet. So one of the great elements of this story of De Grendel, Morgan, is yours. And I really love the full circle that it is, because you first encountered De Grendel as a protege, got to meet Charles Hopkins. When you first met Charles, when you first arrived at De Grendel, did you have any thought that, hey, maybe one day I'll actually work here?
Dan, I think that thought never crossed my mind. I was hoping for it, because at the stage where I came to the Grendel, I was a protege. There was actually no one under Charles, if I can say it like that. And worked a year here, loved it, and they appointed me after that year. But what a great mentor to work under. So I think I'm very fortunate that I got the position here, but not in my wildest dreams. I thought I'll be still standing here after 6-7 years.
He's an extraordinary figure in South African wine. He's been doing this for hundreds of years. He's got this great history of making wine in South Africa. Your career is a lot shorter. Have you got to the stage where you can stand up to and say, hang on, Charles, I don't agree with that?
he's quite a big guy. But yeah, I've gotten to that stage where I can say is that as much as I learn from him, he learns from me. Because I think we as the new generation, or the young and upcoming winemakers in South Africa, we learn stuff from other people, and we try to do it in this winery. And I think he, as much as I learn from him, he learns sometimes from me.
You're not just part of this family, you're also part of the Durbanville family, and you've got a lot of really good, talented winemakers around you. And that relationship, I think, for you was best celebrated in overseeing the Durbanville blend that we've spoken about on the show before, where you were able to create this wine with so many people contributing. Tell me about that process and why that meant a lot, given that you do seem to be a very close family of people in the valley.
Yeah, then we are 11 producers in the wine valley, and I think there's now, like you said, there's some very talented winemakers in the valley, and I think all of them are quite young now. And I started a few years ago where we came together more and more and more, and the camaraderie was so great between these, let's say, 11 winemakers or 11 producers, and we decided to make a Sauvignon Blanc blend. So each winery will give a component of Sauvignon Blanc. We'll make up a blend, we'll taste it as a group, and we'll decide how much of each winery goes into the blend. But if you think about it, it's 11 stories coming one in one bottle. And it's such an amazing thing.
You are almost at the end of yet another vintage. When you look back, it's 7 years ago when you were as a protege, you were first getting to know this part of the world. Does it still give you a bit of a surprise? You think, crikey, I've actually done a hell of a lot in a short space of time.
Yeah. So sometimes when I look back at it, like back at the 7 years, I think I've done a lot. But then I look like a guy like Charles. He has like 30 years under his belt. So I still have a long way to go, but it gets me excited. I think each year is a different year.
Charles tells me this 2025 vintage is something special, but every single winemaker always tells me every vintage is special because they've got wine to sell. He's not the only one, though. There does seem to be a sense that 2025 does have a magic to it.
I don't like to judge the wines this early. Purely looking at analysis, sugar and everything, it looks like it's going to be a good vintage. You look at color on the red wines, it also looks like it's going to be a great vintage. We saw wines with great acidity coming into the winery with the right sugar, and also there's the nice flavors in the wines.
Well, I shall put a release date into the diary and be the judge myself. And if they do turn out to be absolutely amazing, well, it's no real surprise, because between Charles Hopkins and Morgan Stain, you've got some remarkable talent and one of the great teams of Durbanville wine. Thanks, Will.
Thank you.